here. We do have a few minutes left, and because George Dunster did make the trip from Lima, I do want to, I impose on him every time he's been on the show to do this. Tell me a story about one of my favorite people. Tell me something we would not have known about the legendary Easter Straker. And for people who don't know who she is, and if you don't, you should, look her up. Who was she? What was your association? Then tell me something.
I worked with her for 12 years on the TV as her co-host. Actually, I was her announcer, so forth like that. But we had a chance where we would just chat back and forth all the time like that. And she was one of the, you talk about a woman in television or in the media who was smart. She was absolutely on top of everything. And she was very quick, very much. I learned how to interview from her. And I remember her saying that because we would say, well, you got to jazz up the show. Grover Blazer, her director, and myself, we said, well, we got to try this. We got to do this. And she said, I will never substitute substance for flash.
Was she a Barbara Walters or was she a Dinah Shore?
Well, she certainly wasn't a Dinah Shore.
I know she had Eleanor Roosevelt on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, she did. And Roosevelt loved her. Because it was a very, very good. It was an excellent.
But she also did the Three Stooges.
Oh yeah, well.
So
but that wasn't because it was a sop to the public. They were there. They had a certain amount of celebrity status about it, and why not? I did a thing with Richard Simmons once. It was bizarre.
Of course. Well, but I guess
it was fun.
Would Easter Straker have asked Eleanor Roosevelt the tough question that Barbara Walters would ask Eleanor Roosevelt?
Yes.
She would have. Yes. She was that type of interview.
Yes, she was.
What's the hardest you ever saw her be on somebody in that 15 years?
There was a fellow that came in from England, and he was, I forget what he was, his rap was, but he was trying to push some kind of a program, something like that, and she perceived him as being a phony, and she just nailed him down, and she kept pushing and he was unable to answer some questions and so forth.
You know, we have you here. I want to answer a question, and Easter's been gone now for what, over 20 years. She's
Not
been
quite
gone.
that, but almost.
Almost
yeah.
that 20 years
Yeah.
now. There was a book written about her, and
Yes.
What do you make of that book?
Not very much.
A lot of people who knew her said the same thing. It was written after she had passed away,
Right.
and it was kind of an odd book. I've actually talked to Grover about that book.
Yeah.
So
go get him started.
No, he didn't care for the book. That wasn't one of his favorite books. But I bought the book and I read it. And there were two things kind of thrown upon Easter in that book. And if you want to clear them up, that's fine, and if you don't. But the two were that at the end of her life, she wasn't very happy. She did have cancer, unfortunately, which is why she left. That she kind of became, I don't want to say bitter, but she was unhappy. She had given a speech during some awards thing where she wasn't very happy about the news business. And
well, she was, because she was supposed to know horse. She wouldn't hold back on that. But after she retired, and she was dying from cancer. I used to have lunch with her. I'd go over to her place, and we'd sit and talk for an hour or something like that. And yeah, but here's a person who's dying of cancer, and that was weighing on them, obviously, and she knew there wasn't much time left. But I wouldn't say she was bitter. I didn't perceive that as all. And she had some very sage advice about things to do and don't let this happen to the news and things like that.
I guess I wasn't thinking, maybe I've said that, but I guess I misinterpreted that. When she left her show, her TV show, that there was some unhappiness there.
Yeah, there was. I think she felt as though she was forced out because of the management or something like that, and they wanted to do other things. And so she thought, I'm not going to do this anymore. But I used to go over and do the radio show with her.
And she was great on radio.
Oh, yes.
Wonderful.
That was where she started.
And the other thing about Easter that kind of follows her around a little bit, I think, for people who know her outside the Lima area, is that, like many people, she was not matinee idol. A lot of people in the news business are not. She was not, and she said that. She knew that. She was not...
She's not the bubble-headed blonde.
Yes, she was not, she was not Katie Couric. Let's put it that way. She was not Katie Couric. But, that her I think the story in the book was her boyfriend went off to war and was killed, and then there never was really any other relationship in her life. And I don't think there was any implication of anything, and I would never bring that up. But did she have a good social life? Was she?
Yeah, she had a circle of friends who were very important to her. And she knew a couple of authors, and things like that. She was very good friends with, good Lord, I forget his last name. It was a priest who was an expert at canon law, who was in Lima. And she was friends with these kind of people who were very influential and who were very, very erudite in many, many ways. And she used to have them on the show all the time, Father Her, all the time. Who used to swear like a sailor once in a while.
Before we wrap up, tell us one thing about Easter Straker that people wouldn't know. Tell us one thing you know because you sat with her there during commercials. You had dinner with her, not in the book, not on television. 20 years later, what would people know?
She had a wicked sense of humor.
Really?
Oh, yes. Yeah. And she would sit in her office, or sometimes when the mic was off or something like that, she'd make some wry comment about something, would just crack me up, and then, we'd have to come back on it.
One time when you were on, we played her last show, and boy, that was tough to watch.
Yeah.
Oh, what was she? That moment, if people see this,
she was very moved, and
she couldn't even finish.
No, she couldn't. She was emotionally. It was very emotional for all of us who were very close to her.
When the camera went down that day, what happened? We just saw her not be able to finish, and the music played. Mm-hmm. What happened when the screen went dark? You were in the studio.
She just said, "I'm sorry that I couldn't." She apologized, and we said, "There's no reason for you to apologize whatsoever. We understand. This is very, very difficult, and it was difficult for all of us."